Bhigwan. Bhigwan, at the tri-junction of Pune, Ahmednagar and Solapur districts, would have been just another nondescript, dusty, Mufassil town of Maharashtra. But it isn't. What makes this town special to avifauna aficionados like me are these rolling meadows at the foot of the Sahyadri range, otherwise known as the Western Ghats. These meadows harbor an amazing variety of birds: chinkara, also known as the Indian gazelle, striped hyena, Bengal fox, huge variety of reptiles, rodents, butterflies, and such all. Over the next few days, we would come across 100-odd bird species and other wildlife. On 24th September 2024, we flew out of Kolkata on Air India Express, Kolkata to Bhubaneswar and onwards to Pune. From Pune, we drove 110 kilometers eastwards to the small village of Kumbhargaon on the bank of Bhigwan Lake. Flight delays, heavy evening traffic on the Pune-Sholapur highway, torrential rains. Was close to midnight by the time we reached Sandeep Nagare's excellent homestay overlooking the lake. Slept for barely 3 hours, and then at dawn, we hit the vast Shirsufal grasslands, about 10 kilometers west of Kumbhargaon. This is the area of our morning's birding. A few minutes later, we crested a small rise and startled a lone female chinkara grazing on the dew-soaked grass. Just this one shot, and the chinkara scampered down the slope out of sight. Remember Sound of Music, the famous movie? Doe, a deer, a female deer? Well, chinkara does, like the one at left, have a thinner, straighter, smooth horn. Stags, or male deer, on the other hand, like the one at right, have curved, thicker horns with circles. We saw several males and females all through our trip. A while later, Bhigwan served up an adorable tiny busybody, a solitary rain quail. They inhabit all across peninsular India and isolated pockets of the Far East. We could hear another quail calling at a distance, but couldn't spot that. Around the grasslands, we spotted several European rollers. In summer, these rollers breed across Europe and Central Asia. As winter approaches, the easternmost of the Central Asian population migrates to sub-Saharan Africa via the grasslands of Western India. They would halt here for a couple of weeks, eat a lot, build up body fat, and then they would strike across the Arabian Sea to Somalia, flying non-stop over the sea for 3 days. We are so lucky to be here at Bhigwan when they are passing through. Next encounter, Isabelline wheat ear. Again, winter migrants from Central Asia. Had never seen Isabelline wheat ear before. Delighted with my first lifer on the very first session of our birding trip. An hour later, we shifted to the grasslands south of Shirsufal Lake. Several sightings around this area. Suddenly, at a distance, we saw a raptor flying by. Sandeep, our fantastic guide, immediately identified it as a male Montagu's harrier. As the bird landed, we realized it was a male of melanostic morph. My second lifer of the trip. Delighted. A female Montagu's harrier was also flying low, scanning the grassland for prey. Prey spotted, sharp break and bank just before diving, so happy to freeze this moment. We saw one male and two females in this area. We searched wide for Malabar lark and tawny lark, but all we could find were Indian bush larks. Lots of them. Late in the morning, a male rock bush quail gave us a grandstand performance. Literally so. These bush quail breed during autumn and spring when they call out to find a mate. Most probably, this guy was out looking for a mate. These quails inhabit drier areas of the Deccan Plateau and Kutch in Gujarat. After almost 5-6 minutes of this grandstand display, the guy gave us one last disapproving look for intruding into his privacy and vanished beyond the ridge. While we were winding up our morning session, a very pleasant surprise at the fag end. Red-necked falcon scanning the grasslands for breakfast. These 1 feet tall falcons may not appear threatening, but notice the strong claws and beak. They are amongst the top predators of the birding world. They chase flying birds and grab them off the air, just as a tiger would take a deer after a chase. But unlike tigers, these falcons have an amazing success rate of 30 to 40%. In other words, they surely take a prey in every third attempt. A tiger is far less successful. On our second day, we set out well before dawn, drove down NH65 towards Pune, and then branched out towards the small town of Sasawad. Our morning session was at the hilly green meadows to the northeast of Sasawad. Lots of stone chats, prenias, larks, mynas, the occasional Montagu's harrier, and several other grassland species all around. Frequent glimpses of agile and elegant chinkaras, grazing but keeping a cautious eye on us. Amongst all this, majestically perched on a short tree, an adult short-toed snake eagle, surveying the landscape for prey. These powerful raptors inhabit entire peninsular India, Europe, West Asia, and Northern Africa. Delighted with my third lifer of the trip. We were looking for Tawny Lark since yesterday. A while later, we finally sighted one.
Oh, yes.
The क्रिस्टेड लक में
तो ना
तो तुम्हारे मलबार लगभग कितने तरह
नहीं मलबार में आगे डिज़ाइन रहती है।
अच्छा
मलबार रहते हैं ना तो आगे इसके उसके ऊपर डिज़ाइन रहती है ब्लैक। हाँ इससे थोड़ा बड़ा है मलबार।
क्रिस्टेड तो उन्हें लाइटर कलर
Very happy with my fourth lifer of the trip. About an hour later, we drove over to the barley fields south of Sasawad. We were looking for vernal hanging parrots. Most of the barley has been harvested, but the farmer has left standing a patch of ripe crop to attract birds. Soon we spotted a vernal hanging parrot voraciously feeding. Hanging parrots are called that because while feeding, they often tend to hang upside down, like bats. That's why some parts of the world also call them bat parrots. Happy to freeze a few moments of these parrots behaving true to form. The barley fields were hosting a variety of other birds as well. Our guide and host Sandeep Nagare was excellent. So was his hospitality. We hopped over to the farmhouse next door for breakfast with poha, chai, and freshly plucked ripe custard apples, sitafal, as many as we wanted. Meals at Sandeep's homestay were rather pleasant. Variety of chicken, veggies, freshly caught fish from Bhigwan Lake with bajra or jawar rotis. After breakfast, we drove over to the rolling grasslands between Sasawad and Pune. Lush green hilly landscape on top of the Deccan Plateau. Lots of crested buntings all around. We drove over to the edge of the hills surrounding Pune, the city beautifully laid out below us. Mesmerizing sight. A striolated bunting was bathing by the roadside. On the other side of those rocks, the bunting had a nest with chicks. We did not want to disturb them, hence no photographs. A curious Indian robin flew over to inspect our car. Over the next couple of hours, we searched far and wide for broad-tailed grassbird. That was one of our prime target species. But we were disappointed. Onwards for lunch, typical Marathi thali. Delicious. After lunch, we drove 15 kilometers northeast of Sasawad, look for raptors, and one other target species of ours, painted francolin. Soon after, a good sighting of white-eyed buzzard, resident of our subcontinent and adjoining areas of Myanmar, Pakistan, etc. Very happy with my fifth lifer of the trip. Frequent sightings of chinkara and birds, but painted francolins kept eluding us. Finally, with the sun low on the horizon, several quick sightings of painted francolin.
लाइट अच्छा हुआ है साइड लाइट गिरा उस पे
हो गया
My sixth lifer of the trip. In the gathering dusk, we drove 100-odd kilometers southeast back towards Sandeep Nagare's homestay beyond Bhigwan. Curtains down on a lovely day of birding. At the crack of dawn on our third day, we went over to the area east of Shisufal Lake. In the relatively dense scrubland vegetation, we came face to face with a striped hyena. The way she stood her ground and stared us down makes me think that she has a den with young pups behind those thickets. Otherwise, she would have just ran away seeing us. She's such a beautiful girl. Powerful predator, yet cuteness overload. An hour later, we were back at the Shisufal grasslands, about 15 kilometers to the west of Bhigwan. More European rollers have arrived to rest a while on their way to East Africa. Lovely sightings of several more grassland species. On our previous visit to these grasslands, we couldn't find tawny larks, but today there were several all around.
पोरांनी रिप्लाय दिला ती सगळ्यांनी त्यांचं किती कॅमेरे किती काय आता मला टाकावं लागेल माझ्या नावाने 2 असतील ना ती दुसरी गाडी आपलीच होती ना न येणार.
Suddenly, a flash of white and brown, a kilometer down the sloping grassland. We raise our bins and can hardly believe what we are seeing. We rushed over. Shaheen falcons are a subspecies of the peregrine falcon, resident of the Indian subcontinent. Their preferred diet are birds and they almost always plucked them off the air while flying. Here it was, a Shaheen falcon with a laughing dove caught and killed in flight. Shaheen and peregrines are the fastest living being in the world, reaching speeds in excess of 300 kilometers per hour when diving to catch a prey. This Shaheen with a laughing dove kill was perhaps our best sighting of the trip. Time for breakfast. Bonnet breakfast, as we birders call it. Breakfast laid out on the car bonnet. Our last birding session of the trip was around our homestay at Kumbargaon. Somewhat urbanized, but still rich in bird life. Lovely sighting of a female barred button quail. She kept out of the undergrowth by the dirt track and foraged around, probably on grain spilt by farmers. Got several good shots. My 7th lifer of the trip. Few other sightings of known birds as well. Beautiful views of Bhigwan Lake and the surrounding areas. With this, we conclude our short trip to Bhigwan. Must place on record once again the excellent arrangements made by our host and guide Sandeep Nagare and his team. Grateful to them. But what worries me is the way habitats are being destroyed as the grasslands are overrun by agriculture, urbanization, and so-called development. I found that Bhigwan is a very fragile ecosystem, already fighting for existence. The once common Indian grey wolf and Bengal fox have retreated to small pockets and become rare. Indeed, we couldn't spot any during our trip. I do hope we can prevent the hyenas, reptiles, rodents, and the birds vanishing from Bhigwan. We all need to pitch in to prevent that from happening. It would be a disaster if it did.